A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. That, dear listener, I'm going to get it right this time, I promise, is from the rules of war to the inevitable. In part 7, Talins, of Joe Abercrombie's book, Best Served Cold. Did I get it?
You did it.
Yay!
Hey there, this is Cross.
I did it. I'm PJ.
I did it.
I'm PJ and I did it.
We are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
Something that I learned today, Crossland. There is some corner of the country in which you can either DoorDash or Instacart a 5-gallon box of Mountain Dew Baja Blast syrup. And
PJ, what corner of the country would that be?
Neither of us are in that little corner of the country.
Oh no, I thought you were.
Nope.
Damn.
I really wish I was.
How convenient that would be.
You're the one that needs it. Crossland it consists, like, he's subsisting on a diet strictly of Baja Blast and hot dogs, and it's getting too expensive for the Baja Blast part, so he thought he'd be a little bit more economical and try to mix it himself. I told him...
I don't know if the microphone is picking up my pants laugh at the moment.
I told him, and please inform him, because he's not listening to me, that farting into bathwater does not create soda water, so he's going to be shit out of luck anyway. But he's trying, so I'm proud of him.
PJ, I don't have a bathtub that I could fart in. I don't know how to put this to you. It's just a shower. I
do have a bathtub. I so very rarely use that bathtub, but it's so nice when I do. It's this big clawfoot tub. I'm still too tall for it, but it's very relaxing. You should get a tub, Crossland. You should install
in my apartment
cast iron clawfoot tub in your apartment. I think it would.
Right after I install a waterbed, I will put in a clawfoot tub. So today is our 11th episode talking about Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. This week we are in kind of the midsection of the finale. I kind of stopped you right as the climax is happening. Yeah. Blue balls of the storytelling variety. Another part of the reason that I wanted to record this episode very soon
edging guy.
was to give you release. All right, we're going to break up this laugh fest with our shots real quick.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, it's just going to get better from here, Crossland.
So good. So good. Okay. With that, PJ, quick overview.
Yeah, of course. Casca kills another friend. Monza reconnects with Casca and sets forth on taking down her final target. Friendly counts some stuff. Shanked infiltrates Orso's castle, unknowingly bumping into Morvir. Morvir poisons all of Casca's booze bottles and sees his previous poisoning of the crown come to fruition. And finally, Shivers decides to act on his murderous intentions towards Monza.
Yeah, so PJ, crazy that you did this from all the POVs again, right? Like we fully split over the course of the last week or so.
Monza and Shivers are the only ones together the whole time, but they have such different... I guess she was alone with Casca. Shivers wasn't there with her during that. But yeah, never mind. That point is moot. I was going to say that their brains are going in such different directions, but they're also physically separate for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very different. Like the paths are similar, but the ideas are completely separate. Did you see like Orso maiming anyone in this chapter? Did you see like Orso potentially maiming Monza and like all of the shit that happened when Shankt killed all the people? Like, I didn't see Shivers dying, falling off the window, because that would have been full circle moment for a different character, you know? You feel?
Are you asking if I expected that to happen?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, I expected that to happen.
I truly was just trying to befuddle you by saying random shit. I couldn't come up with enough random shit that didn't happen this week. But anyway, how'd you feel about this week's reading?
I mean, you mentioned the blue balls.
Yeah.
But, man, I listened through it twice. And I'm so glad I listened through it twice, because there is just an incredible density of information that gets thrown at you this week. Like it is a very, very chunky little 4 chapters.
Yeah. I really feel like 2 in particular have like a lot of weight and heft to them. The others, it's not that the others aren't important, but there's like a lot that happens as we kind of tackle some of the emotional through lines and things like that. And you know, I'd mentioned a little bit earlier to you in text message, but I'll say it here, is that like in a different world in which this wasn't over the Christmas and New Year's season, I would have broken up this final part a little bit differently so far, as we probably would have had Rules of War last week and then One Nation through the end probably this week.
Okay.
But if it would have been a more normal week. But at the same time, I don't mind taking a little bit longer to kind of languidly go over, 4 chapters here and 4 chapters there. That's effectively like this combined section of what's this week and what's next week isn't longer than what we read in our first episode. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
But the density is real.
Yeah, and I feel like we've got enough to talk about for an entire chapter.
Oh, right.
Jesus Christ, that shot has gone straight to my brain. We've got enough to talk about for an entire episode with this little section of 4 chapters.
PJ hasn't eaten in 2 weeks. PJ was making fun of me and my Baja Blast hot dogs. PJ's just been chewing on some roots in his backyard. I
had salad and a hot dog for dinner tonight.
Oh, you had a hot dog.
I did.
Hot dogs.
That's why they were on the brain.
Yeah, that's fair. Fair.
I mean,
there is a lot to go through, though.
It was like a jalapeno cheddar brat, so a little bit more substantial than a hot dog, but
not that much more.
Still a wiener.
We know how PJ loves his wieners. With that, the rules of war. In our smoothest transition, wow, me, our smoothest transition of all time. We've been talking before this. We didn't drink basically at all while we were building cocktails and imagining them offline right before this. And we are just silly, goofy goobers mode now. So here we go.
Whew.
The rules of war. We return this week with Casca climbing under the tunnels of Fontazarmo. Visiting Caesarea at the completed site of their dig. Caesarea is fearful of Casca potentially spilling the lantern, making the whole thing blow before it's ready.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty good thing to be afraid of, I think.
Yeah, pretty normally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's this whole like kind of fun conversation that happens in the middle there where like I think Caesarea is reacting to like, or Caesarea says something like blows the high heavens or something like that. And Casca replies, I'm not a religious man, but I very much doubt anyone will be letting either of us into heaven, which is good.
Yeah. Is this the first mention of heaven in any of the books so far? I say that, and now I'm having a weird deja vu moment where I feel like I asked this before also, but I don't know if I did or not.
It's not in this book. I don't know about the whole series, though. Like, in this book, there are other mentions of heaven and heavens in particular.
Okay.
But I think that this is the most Christo usage that I can think of in the text, if that makes sense. Especially the juxtaposition of hell versus heaven. But we have, like, demons, and we know that, like, there are many times that other characters have said hell and are referring to the demons as well that are under the earth, but it's not kind of a one-to-one.
Right. I wonder if is the Cantic religion also the Gurkish religion, or is it distinct?
I think it's distinct.
Okay, because I know
because they're different cultures. Yeah,
Caesarea is Cantic, I believe.
I
believe that's mentioned.
Yeah. You're right. I hadn't thought about that. That probably is true. There are some other things that we haven't hit yet that I could point to kind of talk about it a little bit more interestingly, but we'll talk about that, I think, when we get there. And it's sharp ends. We can chat a little bit more about this, I think, in sharp ends as it pertains, because that gets a little bit more into religion than anything else does. So had a brief moment where I was able to actually take a minute looking through the rest of the text. There are mentions in the original trilogy. I think it's a total of like just around 20 times that the term heaven or heavens is used. Heavens is generally when they're referring just to the sky in general above them, in a couple of the times that I looked into context. But there are a couple of different times that Glockta compares heaven to hell, and like a little bit of heaven and a little bit of hell, and otherwise. So not the first time.
Gotcha.
But
more times than I would have expected. More times than I remember.
Same.
Yeah,
same. Had that moment, so I took it. But yeah, interesting. This definitely seems, though, to me, and again, I didn't like deeply evaluate each of those outside of that one that I found with Glockta saying a little bit of heaven, a little bit of hell in Last Argument of Kings. This seems to be the most Christian-centric version of that we've read, though, as far as that like direct comparison of like heaven and hell as like some moral judgment at the end of your life goes.
Right. Yeah. And it being something that has to be earned.
Yeah. Right.
Which is exactly what you said. So that doesn't add anything.
Well, it's fair enough. I do also like Caesarea's little moralization on courage and not being a way to fight. This whole like blowing out the earth from under them. And it accompanies well the feeling that we get a little bit later as it becomes clear that Casca intends to kill him here, as he replies, "This is war. There are no rules." He clubs the man shortly thereafter, but somehow doesn't manage to kill him. There's a bit of a struggle in the hallway, including like whipping out his sword and rubbing it against the ceiling and finally making it through the man after he, kind of doesn't beg, but asks for a fight with knives instead, and a just fight.
Yeah, asks for them to be on level footing, as it were. And Casca makes a very succinct point. He's like, nah, man, I would have blown you up. I'm not going to feel bad about a sword versus a knife. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
This is... I expected... I mean, again, nature of the podcast with the breaks and everything. So this is the first chapter after I'm like, I'm surprised you didn't kill him faster than this at the end of last week. So, that's where my brain's at, but I understand this is right after the previous death, so but it's in a separate week, so
I think it's a couple of days. It's not immediate. I think that this is a week or two later. No, it's not immediate.
It's a couple chapters between.
Yeah, right.
We get conversations between him and the other captains in the meantime.
Yeah, at this rate, we're going to have a captain die every week. Maybe. We don't get Monza's revenge paid out here, so we get somebody's revenge paid out. It's a secondary or maybe tertiary revenge plot for the book, but it's great, and I'm here for it. I totally agree with you. I think it's great, and I'm also here for it as well. PJ, hasn't every one of these plots to some degree really just boiled down to revenge in the end?
Everything has been revenge.
Every single one of them. Every one of them.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. They may have seemed like other things at first, but they're all revenge.
Yeah.
On some deeper level.
What is Joe trying to say here?
Everything is revenge, always, for all time.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is not revenge. Revenge is a dish best served cold.
If you boil it down, there's revenge in a whole lot of stuff.
If you boil it down, revenge is a warm, syrupy remnant of itself. You gotta keep it full-bodied. You can't boil that shit down.
That
was a bad joke.
Gonna try to make a Baja Blast joke in there somewhere, but
no, it was enough to bring it up again. Oh God. So I do really like this, though, like this whole scene as far as he gets to like actually run him through and everything like that. I think it's great. That said, there's also a small reflection on kind of what he said a little bit earlier or within that moment. He replies, Mercado took your chair, not us, to which Casca replies, entirely different matter. Women can betray me as often as they please. We learn a bit more about this later, but what do you think of like Casca and his revenge on these captains? You know, 1 was an accident, 2 is a plan, kind of a thing.
1 wasn't an accident, though.
No, but 1 is just maybe a little bit of revenge. You know, like okay. It's like
1 is dabbling in revenge. 2 is committed.
Yeah.
I feel like he's made some subtle allusions to this before, but I think he understands, like he's made a couple different points, and I'll try to tie it in later, but I'll get through what I'm thinking here. He's made a couple of allusions that makes me think that he understands that even though Mons is the one that took his chair, she wasn't the agent of betrayal. That title primarily belongs to Benna, and secondarily belongs to these other captains who actively agreed with Benna. So I think that falls into the insults that Casca's always thrown Benna's way. Like he's never spoken really positively about Benna at all, as far as I can remember. And there's a comment that he makes to Monza or about Monza a couple episodes ago, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but I remember it sticking in my brain, and it makes me think this is what he's talking about. Like he understands that Monza didn't actually actively betray him. She just kind of went with it.
Is it when he's taking the chair in Peranti?
I think so.
Or is it like last week? Okay. Yeah, because there's a couple of different things there. Like you're lucky I don't kill you. You know, it's sort of a traitorous circle out here.
Although he does somebody asks him like why he's not more angry at Monza, and he says he's come to an understanding about it or something to that effect.
Yeah, that sounds right. I feel like that's to friend or not. It feels like it's a part of that Ishri friendly circle that happens in that scene.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think that sounds right. I think it is.
That feels right to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, in his final rebellious moments, Cesaria slams down his lamps, lighting the trail of gunpowder back to the Gurkish sugar. There's many barrels there. Casca makes a Indiana Jones style run for it, screaming as he makes it out, even tripping and falling. No one's reacting, which is another reason that it feels very Indiana Jones to me, because like no one says anything. And then a little bit later, you know, Victus even remarks kind of on the ridiculousness of the moment and kind of asks where Cesaria is before the explosion arrives.
It is, you know what this is? A very small vengeance plot by Cesaria. It just, I mean, just
it's all revenge.
Yeah, it's all revenge. It's a vengeful move to, in your dying moments, try to blow up the person that killed you. It's a very funny scene with the delay. Yeah. But I find it funny that everything boils down to vengeance more and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Victus kind of has this like, what? look about him the whole time as far as any of the information goes. But as it does, though, as the explosion goes off, the earth rumbles and everything else, it's kind of anticlimactic, despite the fact that we see this massive crater in the ground where formerly there was a tunnel and earth and everything else, as the upper walls appear undamaged until a tower slips and slides and an entire section of the wall and tower slide into the crater. They've blown apart, even down towards the trenches, killing a number of the 1,000 swords as this all collapses, completely unplanned. Victus shouts charge, and the men get going on their ladders and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this sort of double beat of ineffectiveness, I guess. Like, there's no explosion and no damage, and it makes me wonder, because this is a very comedic scene. It's like very heavy with physical comedy. And I'm curious if they'll lean into that for the adaptation. If the scene exists at all in the adaptation, which I could see this, maybe not. Maybe that's not totally necessary to include. But if they do, I could see them toning down the comedy of it for the sake of maintaining a more traditional grimdark mood when you have such a smaller sort of package to tell the story as opposed to an entire novel. I wouldn't call this I wouldn't call this novel comedic, but there's some great comedy parts. Whereas if you sprinkle too much of that into a movie, you get a comedy, like an action comedy. And I don't know if that's what they'd be going for.
So I definitely see exactly what you're saying, but I think that there is a delicate balance that the story kind of draws well. And my comparison, I mean, that like comes to the dome immediately is like the beginning of most of Deadpool, which Tim Miller directed, is pretty grim, but comedic, right? You know, obviously Ryan Reynolds is a different like layer of jokes and like number of jokes per minute, I think that is outrageous compared to a lot of other things. And I wouldn't expect that same sort of comedy rhythm to hit. But I do think that you would maintain a lot of the comedies in a Guy Ritchie-esque fashion. Like, I imagine this, you could like David Fincher this movie and make it like mostly about all the dark themes of revenge and like pull that to the fore. But I think that's a mistake versus going like the King Arthur route with Guy Ritchie, even though it's not a perfect movie. I think that that's a better one-to-one.
I do
to
love
some
that
degree.
movie too.
I like it a lot. It's got its flaws, but it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
The CGI is really shoddy, and they were clearly trying to set something up when they should have like not done that. But like a lot of that movie's great.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more my comparison, if that makes sense. I think I agree with you in that maybe that this is a moment that you cut, but I don't think it's because of the comedy. I just think it's like kind of extraneous.
I don't think it's because of the comedy either. It's just.
Then again, there's not much comedy in the end here, like in this whole part. So outside of like the more Veer bit a little bit later with Shanked, but like that's like kind of
that's
comedic.
Enough.
That's more ironic.
Think about how much time that we're talking about for.
Yeah, but this is like good physical comedy, which is a different thing to like have written, you know, to like have a scene like this play out. I don't know. I'm with you. I think that this is one that is on the edge for me. I would love to see this one preserved, but I could totally see almost the entire tertiary, like you said, arc with the captains being cut with Casca.
Yeah.
It is kind of a tertiary out. It's a great one. Yeah. Yeah.
Potentially.
That'd be great. Yeah. It would be weird to have a montage so close to the end, but I get it.
Yeah.
Although it could be montaged right at the end, and like Monza goes to Casca and is like, what happened to your captains? And then we see two of the deaths and Victus stands there.
Or right after he's made, I guess, right after he becomes Captain General. Like it could be a like pretty close to the middle
you could
of the
move
movie.
it up in the plot too. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, either of those would do, to be honest. Again, it's tertiary. It's good. But I think you would keep a lot of the humor that's in this story variously. I think that that's necessary. That's a necessary ingredient to the first lot of me because it balances the grimdark tone.
Yeah.
Kind of like Tyrion does. I mean, like Tyrion is sort of the same thing obviously in Game of Thrones, but to a lesser degree because there are more Tyrions, if this makes sense, in First Law, or people that have like a consistent sense of humor than a lot of George's work. There are plenty of funny jokes and funny moments and funny people, but
okay. I agree
since we're on
with
the
you.
adaptation train,
I agree with you. I think it just depends on how they pull it off. I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah,
but I also don't want this to be like I don't want it to be relegated to being primarily a comedy because I think that can take away from it.
But having comedy in an action movie is not a bad thing either.
I agree with that too. It's just about balance.
Yeah. Like, okay, if we're talking about just in general right now, like the fantasy landscape as we imagine it of things that are out there. We've got Game of Thrones. We've got Wheel of Time. I mean, Game of Thrones really isn't releasing anymore, so Does it really count? House of the Dragon, sure. So we've got House of the Dragon, we've got Wheel of Time, we've got
Lord of the Rings,
Rings of Power,
and whatever animated thing is in theaters now.
Oh, the War of the Rohirrim? Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything about that until I looked at showtimes for the coming couple days. Unfortunately,
from reviews that I've heard, not that it's bad, but it just seems like it was rushed out to ensure that they maintained rights as opposed to like giving the time to finish the product.
Gotcha.
Which is kind of annoying because apparently it was pretty good, but there were some like corners that felt clearly cut. Weird. So good example though, War of the Rohirrim, Legend of Vox Machina, which is like the extreme opposite, right? Like the extreme comedic. And Castlevania, which is still putting out stuff, but like that's kind of in between. That's like grimdark with comedy. I find First Law to be most adjacent. If it were well executed, it would be adjacent to like Castlevania's tone, but with like the Guy Ritchie-esque flourishes.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, it makes sense.
It needs that comedy, but like The Witcher is like dark and serious, and like Game of Thrones, when it was at its worst, at its end, it was just dark and serious, and like all these things. And First Law is dark and serious, but part of the reason it doesn't feel as grimdark as a lot of like real quote grimdark does is because there's so much levity. And so I think you need the like you need the comedy, the cool.
It's a core to the soul sometimes. Of the story.
Yeah. It's the spirit, which I have said a lot today in text messages. The spirit of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, along aside, but I feel like it can find its own leg to stand on that's different than all of those other shows because it is genuinely funny, and that's where it would stand apart. But you don't want the thing you want to avoid is MCUifying the humor in any degree. Like, and this maybe could be seen as like a James Gunn-esque like MCU joke.
Yeah.
So the timing. It's good. It works well, but
I mean,
maybe it's too much.
I think you hit the nail on the head for me in a negative way when you called it an Indiana Jones sort of little scene.
There you go.
Because
that could be right.
It works so well there, and I just don't think that vibe meshes with what I'm imagining the movie to be. But who the fuck am I to say what the movie should be? So,
well, yeah. I mean, we're chatting about it, so
yeah.
You are. Who the fuck are you to say about what you think it should be? I think that you need to retain humor, but there may be elements that are disingenuous to the overall tone that you would adjust or cut. Sure.
Yeah.
This is really good for Casca's character, and this humor works with Casca's character. But does that fit the oeuvre of a movie, of which has to be much more solidly toned? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
A great example of this going the wrong direction is Borderlands, of which Tim Miller was hired to do reshoots on. And you can tell what he reshot because boy, oh boy, were those scenes funny and violent. And I wonder what the fuck they did with the rest of that movie. Anyway, including that car scene in which no one is in that's like we should do one shot on that at some point just to complain about it. But
yeah, I should.
Anyway.
Is that even out anywhere? I don't know. I don't really care.
It's probably streaming somewhere. It's like an hour and a half. It's not that much. It's not that long, which is part of the problem. But yeah. All right. To round out the chapter, as mentioned, Victus asks where Cisteri is. Casca notes that he was behind him and exclaims in such a profound acting voice that he can't believe that he didn't make it. He saved him. And must have been blown to bits by that Gurkha sugar, and Victus is suspicious, to say the least.
That's a good rhyme.
The document did me dirty and corrected suspicious to specious, which is not the same.
No, that's not. Casca knows how suspicious Victus is, too, given that this is all in his perspective, and he internally narrates the eye flash down to the empty scabbard. So, man, I feel like Casca didn't do as great of an acting job here as he did previously. Not that the last one was that good anyway, but he already went down the path of like, oh, he's not behind me. He was supposed to be behind me. And he could have just kept on that path. Like, I don't know where he went. I thought he was running right after me. And not make up
Said too much.
lie about. Yeah, exactly. Said much too much.
He pulled a more veer in some ways.
Yeah. Turn around and go fucking look for him.
Right. That would be the real seller would be to do the opposite. Yeah. Okay, from there we move to the absolutely crazy chapter, One Nation. Before we get into the shit, this is crazy. This is such a good chapter.
This is pretty crazy.
This is a pretty good chapter. So we arrive upon the day of coronation, and Monza's all dressed up in the finest of Styrian silks, covering all of her faults and flaws that led her here to this very day by Rogan's side. It's a small thing, and of course, we're fixating on conversation about dresses, because that's
going to fight you about it for like 2 hours.
For 2 hours.
And then I'm going to bring it up all the time.
All the time. Every episode for like a year.
I'm much too sober for that right now.
Yeah, it's true. We also edited down so much of that conversation, which is so funny in hindsight. Like, we cut off like a full 30-minute diatribe where we spun in a circle saying the same things that we had already said once before, which is very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of a small thing, but it's funny that they mention both the neckline, and then she also mentions like cutting the ass out of the dress to show skin where they could, as everything else is either scarred or maimed or otherwise, only presenting the presentable from the Butcher of Capriel, the Snake Duchess of Talins. It's just such an interesting, I don't know.
They didn't actually cut the ass out, right? I think that was just a thought that she had.
It's a thought. Yeah. They didn't actually do that, but they may as well have, to her point.
Yeah, like that's the only unscarred piece of skin she could find, or they would have been able to find.
Right.
But I think it's funny to have this sort of elaborate dress be very clearly custom made to her. And she still remarks later on that the thin, like, white silk glove does nothing at all to hide her deformed hand. Like, you can still see right through it, or not see through it, but like, the glove was useless.
It doesn't obfuscate the issue. Yeah.
But they still covered it, and ironically, it saves her life.
Exactly. They did something about it, and it was, in fact, what saved her as well. But yeah, the glove is an interesting note. It's one of those things that has been brought up over and over and over again within the story as the sort of thing, she can't use that hand. She can't use that hand. She keeps it gloved because she's offended. And otherwise, it comes to roost at the very end of the story. Yeah. Hopping forward just a bit, kind of to move around this, because there are a couple of different things that happen here in kind of a, disjunctive order to talk about them. But we get a reflection on the things that Monza had accomplished in the intervening days. She created her own little council where she could, recruited a veteran to lead her small army, and rallied the force to collect taxes in the city. A group, collectively, Grullo, Scavier, Old Rubine, and Volfier, which is her like little council of Styrian magistrates and leaders. What'd you make of this kind of eclectic group as they're presented?
I thought it was funny that she employed the West method of hiring a pair of bitter rivals as joint leaders to sort of keep an eye on each other.
Entirely. I'm so glad that you brought it up as like the West method. I was going to write something like that, but I was like, I think we'll talk about it. But yeah,
for sure.
So good.
It was great.
Corinne Polder.
Mm-hmm.
Right here, front and center. Yeah, I love this, particularly because that feels like a callback, but also Volfier just has this like very different tone about him, and it's interesting to see like how quickly power accumulates too. I think that this just goes to show that like a vacuum happens and then it's filled, and that's how things happen.
Yeah,
that's how things go.
And they make quick work of collecting coin from
levying taxes, collecting taxes
somewhere.
Yeah.
From who? I don't know. Who is there to collect taxes from in this situation?
I mean, the Talins, right? Like, they're the only ones who really haven't been like super pressed compared to all the other people we've seen. But
she gets money and immediately spends it on arms. Like, just in one ear, out the other, as far as coins go.
Yeah, it is really interesting that's also the way it goes. You got to keep and levy an army. So that's how you do it. So moving backwards and forwards, this kind of combines the two pieces of the conversation. We get a small conversation that happens with Cotarda here, one of the other duchesses. And I think it's really interesting for a couple of different reasons. One, I have talked to people in my life that have had this experience or that have this experience, so I think that that's interesting to see it reflected somewhere else. Two, this is literally a character. Three, she does kind of feel like an NPC, and that's intentional. But to kind of reflect on it, there's this indifference of royalty, I think, that she feels, not just of being royal or like indifferent to being royal, but the idea that she is a characterless person walking through life without any like clear guideposts or like any sort of defining traits. She doesn't feel courageous. And so Monza tells her back, like, well, to be courageous, you just gotta be courageous. It's like, good fucking advice, Monza. Like, good work, philosopher queen.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, you know,
I'm cured.
Yeah, right. I was curious on your thoughts on Kotarda, this whole like idea that, you know, is kind of briefly explored to some idea. I also like the meta of it all.
Yeah, I thought it was a really different scene to include because we haven't gotten a whole lot of the same sort of royalty making or royalty building that we get between Baez and Jazal. Despite that not being like a perfect relationship, we got a lot of information. And Jazal took in a lot of information, both from Baez in the like little lessons that he was giving on the road, but also from Logan. Whereas Monza's got Casca, which is helpful and useful, but not so much. There's not quite as much immediately obvious overlap between being the general of a mercenary army and being the Duchess of a landmass. So for her to have some sort of insight and perspective to sort of keep in mind as she rises through the ranks and gets elevated in station, I think is important. But it's odd how quick this is.
It is odd how quick it is. There's also a purposelessness here that I think is so interesting to me.
It's something placed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure where we'll focus back to it later, but maybe we won't.
I don't think so. I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess my point is more, I don't mean that like this is purposeless in the way that it's presented, but that there is also, and it's not often depicted, but there's like being royalty is not all it's cracked up to be. And that's also been an exploration that we've had throughout this story. Like power or positions of power often come with other strings and often come with other, you know, like tithings, and they don't have that same sort of feeling of impact. She's like, Kotarda says something to the effect of, I'm told that I have a lot of power, but I don't feel like I have a lot of power, or like say, you know, the go about the day to day. So it's just an interesting exploration of that whole idea, I think, from Kotarda's perspective. She embodies sort of like it would be like the ego of Jazal in psychology terms, in like Freudian psychology terms, I think. But super ego? Yeah, I think it's ego.
I took one psychology class in like freshman year of college, and I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Yeah, I took just our high school class, but then actually, correction, I didn't even take our high school class, but I took the test, the AP test, and I got a 4. So just because I had read a bunch of psychology and I had taken a couple of the psych prep like things and knocked it out.
Perfect.
So, but yeah, it fits. I studied a lot. I read a lot of psychology growing up because I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist. But oh my god, no. Yeah, it's interesting. I just like that sort of perspective, at the very least, that we get on royalty in general. It's a lens through which we don't see often. But
on rulers.
Getting back to the one nation of it all, a ton of people have assembled from all over the circle of the world, with the exception of anyone from the Union joining in. We have people from Thond, the Thousand Isles, the ever-present Baelish, the Northmen, and more, here for the crowning of the King of Styria.
So, as we... the Baelish is so fucking funny.
Yeah.
No Union representation. Not surprising. For a couple different reasons. One, these are the usurpers to the throne. of the and like the relationship between Orso and the Union is one thing, but also like they haven't been present for Orso either, and also this is the Gurkish side of the Gurkish Union Bayaz Khalul fight. So of course an envoy of Bayaz probably wouldn't be present.
Right.
A couple different ladder rungs of reasons why. But I think we get a call out that there's a bunch of Gurkish here too.
More to fill out sort of the Union missing.
And then I thought it was odd or notable maybe that the Northmen are here. There are some Northmen present.
A delegation of the North. Yeah.
Yeah. Does it specifically talk? Is this the North that we know, or is this a different North?
It's capital N Northmen, merchant captains of the Thousand Isles, heavy bearded Northmen, bright-eyed Baelish.
Okay, and those are separate, and we know the Baelish are kind
those
of...
Those are separate,
North.
but I assume that they're probably mingling together because they probably have, similar beliefs and interests.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
People from Suljik and a pair of priestesses from Thond, where they worship the sun, heads shaved to a yellow stubble. So, females from Thond, head shaved.
Whole lot of description compared to everybody else. Seems important. Don't know what to make of it.
Yeah. And I guess we fully discounted the Union, but there are 3 people from Westport. 3 sort of, Styrian Union members that are, you'd call them cusp people.
Yeah.
So,
but
a small
Westport is a part of the League of 9 now, right?
No, Westport was never, because it's Union controlled. So yeah.
Okay.
These are just people that are like, this is Styria. Of course we go to a Styrian event, but there's no other Union there to back them up.
Gotcha.
It would be like if we controlled Korea and showed up to a Korean convent, like a full like Asia like meeting, APAC or whatever, and the US shows up and is like, hey, we're here.
Okay.
But it's the opposite because like,
but the other way around. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Any notable remarks upon, this is kind of a small thing, but anything of note that you felt in relation to the cities, their crests, all the flags, any of the sort of like pride sort of things?
I am fully expecting to hear more about these pair of priestesses because of how...
Oh, the priestesses. I was talking about the flags. I love
no, priestesses. Just in general. I thought you were talking about the people in general.
Yeah, fire away.
We still don't know a whole lot about Suljik.
Yeah, just our boy.
It's been mentioned, but...
Oh, no, sorry. He's from the Thousand Isles. What's his name? Oh, my God. It's going to kill me. I always forget his name. This happens to me every time after I complete the original trilogy. Our annoying boy that most people hate.
Oh, Brother Longfoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Thousand Isles. He's not Suljik, right?
Honestly, Crossland, I don't know.
I'm triple checking.
We know that Shankt has some Suljik spices to eat his rump steak with.
Very true. I think he's from Suljik. My heart and soul says that he's from Suljik. The wiki isn't sure. The wiki cites a couple of different things, and I'm not sure what I believe. I always have to double check this wiki. It's it's well maintained for the most part, but there are some things where I'm like, I don't know if it's right, and I go double check things. And I'm doing this on short notice, so I have not. But I'm going with Suljik as his point of origin. But
okay.
He may in fact be from the Thousand Isles. It's one of the two.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, it's a small. He's a part of one of those small subsets. So you're expecting more from Thond because of the specificity.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm expecting more from those 2 characters specifically because they're the only ones that get like such a
characteristics.
Yeah, such a unique call out. Yeah. Other than bearded Northmen, but that's different, I think.
And Suljik in vivid silks, like we know that the Suljik wear silk. Suljik silk is everywhere in all of these books. So, yeah. Fair enough. What I was mentioning, though, wasn't the specificity around these people so much as it was about the leaders that we have, the 5 leaders, and the 9 sort of flags that we have for the various duchies, right? So Katarda wore a Foyne scarlet. Satori said golden cockle shells around the hem of his black gown. Lorazio, the bridge of Peranti on his gilded cape. Bad actors representing the cities of Styria in some cheap morality play, except at a vast expense. Patine, and peasant cloth for green silk, for sparkling rings, 6 rings for Nicanti, etc. What anything there stand out to you as far as the spare no expense nature?
I mean, it reminds
the city
me
representation
for some reason. I mean, I know the reason. It reminds me of that play that Baez put on, or not the play, but the going to the costume shop.
Yeah, the showing and like getting the wizard outfit.
Yeah. Play the part.
Affectation. Yeah.
Yeah. People expect this, important. So you'll be more well respected and accepted if you look like what they're expecting.
Fair. There are a couple of different things like singing that happens from the crowd. One of the funnier moments is Patine mutters to himself, "Can I hear spirits?" And Lorazio replies, "You can hear boys with no balls." Which is another funny moment tucked within this very serious scene, which is very good. Good.
You want to know what the funniest moment is?
What?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, we're getting there. So from there is this sort of cheer that comes on from each of the individual leaders as Rogant kind of finally makes his way up to the center stage. There are these different congratulations. Monza's is last among them, of which, he also comments on the fact that she hasn't been going to his bedchamber often or of late, which is an interesting note as well here. And the box opens as the key turns, as we know, and everyone freaks out as the crown is visible. They each take, a finger to grab each individual frond of the crown before they place it upon his head. As they do such, Rogant begins to give a speech and calls for the years of blood to come to an end. And yeah, we'll just start there. Anything on the speech, the crown?
So the crown, it's referred to as fronds, but it's I feel like it's also referred to as oak leaves.
Yeah, 5 golden oak leaves sprouted from it. But they're also 6. There are 6 fronds that point upward, but there are leaves that circle around.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Yep. I was trying to rectify that in my head on what is the frond of an oak leaf? Is that one of the lobes or?
It might actually be considered the oak leaf itself, because even then, the 6th curled about a monstrous flashing diamond, and it's referring to the leaves there. So I think it is implying that the leaves are fronds. So they each grab one, and then yeah. So it is just leaves.
What an audacious crown!
Yeah,
the diamond the size of a chicken egg.
Right. Yeah. As big as a chicken egg. Absolutely.
That's fucking crazy.
Incredible choice. As such, there were a lot of forced smiles. Everyone outside cheers. Styria, it seemed, was one nation. There's this little speech. Our fellow Styrians, our humbled subjects, and our friends from abroad, all welcome here. The years of blood are at an end. No longer will the great cities be our proud land, struggle one against the other, but will stand as brothers eternal, bound willingly by the happy ties of friendship, of culture, of common heritage, marching together. It's as if Styria wakes from a nightmare 19 years long. Some among us, I'm sure, can scarcely remember a time without war. But now the war is over, every one of us. And then people start to have some reactions.
They do.
And as he attempts to bring this speech to a close, as he intended, now it's time for Styria to become one nation. One nation. Everyone dies except for Monza on stage.
Oh, it's fucking horrifying. She puts it together really, really quickly. that like this is contact poison and I'm the only one that didn't touch the crown because I'm wearing this glove.
Is that too quickly? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Not too quickly. I'm just impressed with her ability to notice it. I'm not trying to don my conspiracy theory cap on this one. I think she's just genuinely that sharp. Beyond this being such a great strategic execution by Mervere, this is such a great symbolic, like not symbolic execution, but there's great symbolism in the crown being poison.
Yeah, it is an excellent piece of symbolism, and it's one that I think runs adjacent to the original trilogy, right? In that the power of the crown is fake, and the power of the crown is also poison. Like, power in general is one of the fixation of Joe's throughout. I mean, it can't be argued throughout these 4 books, but is definitely resonates throughout all 9. And I think that this is one of my favorite pieces of symbolism of it, because it is such an indictment on the idea that you can just simply with a word, with an action, with a declaration, unite a people, as opposed to through action and through work and effort, which is, he's effectively taking advantage of a situation. So beyond the convenience of Morveer poisoning and like everything else that kind of happens to like make this scene happen, there's an indictment on the hubris that Rogan has to just be able to step in and pick up the crown as well.
And he also
and that
points
the only
out,
person left. Go ahead.
I was going to make kind of a joke button on the thing. So you can go ahead.
All I was going to say is that, and then the only person left is the person of whom has done the most damage to the country across the board, but is perhaps also the only uniting element either in hatred and vitriol or through the uniting power of winning a bunch of battles for them as like a leader, a true leader.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's true. So now she gets to put the crown on her head.
Yeah, then she'll die. Can't wait.
And I think what this does to unite the entire circle of the world is that everybody appreciates a crown with a big ass diamond on it.
True. True.
Do you think this diamond is bigger than Jazal's diamond?
I think it is bigger than one of Jazal's diamonds, but Jazal's crown had many jewels.
Well,
as we recall.
Specifically like his battle crown, which was made to be like very sleek and minimalistic, but by as the final note to the designer was put a big ass diamond on it.
Yeah, right. I think that this is bigger than that diamond, but again, isn't more than the sum of every other diamond on the regular crown. Like less than the primary Union crown. That's my vision.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I just think that there's some sort of pissing contest between...
Of course there is. This is all a pissing contest. This whole series could be settled as a juvenile pissing contest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Any other thoughts on the poison? Was this like a cool scene? How did you feel about this on the whole as far as an execution goes?
It's a great cinematic one too. I mean, we've already gone on a side tangent on adaptation, but I'm curious if you show Morveer poisoning the crown ahead of time, or if you let this play out first for the drama of it.
What you would see, I think you wouldn't see him poisoning the crown specifically, but I think you would see the part of that chapter where he's rooting around in the building, him finding the door, and then we would see people leaving the door, like the box go into the door, and then later the box come out of the door to make its way in. So you would see the box, you would see Morveer in the box, and then you would kind of know and understand without seeing the literal poison.
Fair.
You cut out the action, but you give all of the like motive and everything else by seeing and otherwise. So, and then you could flash back, potentially, but I don't think you would.
Yeah. I don't think you need to.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessary, but It is interesting. It's one of those things where in my original read of this book, so much is happening at once that I barely caught the details of what was being poisoned because it all happened so fast and so ill described. And you read it and you're like, oh, what was that? I don't know. He was poisoning something. Okay. Gold something? Cool. And then you like move into a couple of other chapters. There's this big explosion, climactic moment. It kind of distracts you. You're not thinking about it. You're here. You're at the crowning scene. You're like, wow, crazy, crazy, crazy. Super cool. And then he puts the crown on and you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, my God. So is my experience. But
Okay.
I understand that I've given you a different experience.
I have had a different experience here.
Yeah, such is the nature of the beast. But cool. All right. I think with that, we'll go into our little drink segment here. PJ, what did you have in the first half of the episode?
First half of the episode. I don't have a good name for this. So maybe you and I can brainstorm it a little bit pretty quick. But
One Nation. I'm just kidding.
I did intentionally make it a little bit bloody with a drizzle of grenadine as a kind of a garnish, but I think it actually kind of pulled the cocktail together, not to get ahead of myself too much. But
toot your horn. Yeah.
It is effectively an Infante, which I've talked about in the past, but equal parts rum, lime juice, and orgeat, and then a third of a part. So I did 1.5 ounces of all of those, and then I did 1/2 ounce of orange liqueur. Shook all that up, poured it over ice, and then added a drizzle of homemade grenadine over the top of it, so it all kind of like flows down the side. So it could be something bloody, something violent, potentially, if we wanted to. The Infante is a great drink. This just kind of pushes it even closer in the direction of a full formed Mai Tai. I think maybe too much to be like, it's not as good as a Mai Tai and it's not as good as an Infante. But adding that grenadine in there, especially kind of mixing it up a little bit more, rounds it out a little bit. So, yeah.
So are you saying it was better when it was sharper than an Infante? Like,
I'm saying that it was better when it was simpler. Like, I think adding the orange liqueur and the grenadine just threw it out of balance. The ratios for a Mai Tai are very different, and it includes more ingredients. Yeah, the Infante works, but adding more to it doesn't so much.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
Yep. Back half beer, I've just got a Pacifico.
Nice. Easy. Classic. Tasty.
Yeah.
Pacifico.
What are you drinking, Crossland?
PJ, we are still in cocktail contest refinement mode, as you are well aware of. That's why Baja Blast syrup came up at the very beginning of this episode. We were talking about making a Baja Blast syrup before we started recording, among other ideas.
Like stealing it from a Taco Bell.
Like stealing it from a Taco Bell, yes. I am going to present 2 cocktails, which is pretty typical for what I've been doing at these contests for the last couple of years. I just generally say, judge this one, don't judge that one, just have this one to enjoy. So my Baja Blast cocktail is likely to be my enjoy cocktail, even though I think I'm going to almost put more effort into that from a presentation standpoint, which is just funny. But the cocktail that I think I'm going to go with is one that you suggested, and I've kind of been like trying to workshop in a proper direction, given ingredients and kind of what I'm working with. And it's a spin on the bumboat. Did I have the bumboat the last time that we were on the show?
I don't
just standard bumboat.
I don't think so.
Because I didn't have the syrup
made the
yet.
cinnamon syrup.
Yeah,
like yesterday or 2 days ago.
Either that or Sunday afternoon. But yeah, very recently, regardless. So I don't think I had it, which is why I made one on Monday, and it was excellent. However, I found that the ratio wasn't working the way that I wanted it to. I wanted it to be like a little bit more, it not fireball adjacent, but to have a little bit more of that cinnamon flavored. And I wanted to cut back a little bit on the acid and dial up some of the herbal notes. So what I'm calling this is the unemployed boat as opposed to a bum boat. What it is it is 1 ounce of rum, 1.25 ounces of rye. I'm using Pinhook rye, which is very good. 2 ounces of pineapple juice, 1 ounce of lemon juice, and 1 ounce of simple syrup. So a couple of changes. It's less lemon juice, it's more rye, and it's more of the simple syrup. Also using a couple drops of saline solution to kind of give it a rounder mouthfeel.
Cinnamon, right? Or did you take the cinnamon out?
What?
The simple?
Cinnamon what? I said cinnamon simple. Discord must have cut it out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I said cinnamon. Cinnamon
Gotcha.
is the Winnemon. But yeah, cinnamon simple syrup, because of course. That's a key ingredient. That's what I made. So it's very good. It changed color a little bit too much from what I wanted. I wanted it to maintain its yellow color. It's a little bit deeper. Well, this is different now, but it was a deeper orange, darker than I wanted it to be. So kind of working out those kinks, but overall very excited for the cocktail. I think we're going to flash blend, add some ice. I think I'm going to add another ounce. I think I'm going to adjust. I'm not going to add the rye. I think I'm going to overgo on the rum a little bit. So I think I'm going to dial down the rye, dial up the rum, because I think more people will prefer that flavor. I like this more, but again, crowd pleasing is a different trick.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
that's the change. On the back half beer, I am drinking Drecker Stuff Pineapple once again. I went to my local store and bought another can because I've just been buying them a can at a time for some stupid reason. But I bought a pick your own 6 or pick your own 4. And I was like, I'm just going to get another one. And
There you go.
yeah, not disappointed. It's very good.
Perfect.
Yeah, cool. All right. With that, we move into All Dust. We hop over to Shiver's perspective, and he can't help but smile as he thinks on the death of Duke or King Rogant. But more importantly, is a reflection that is much the opposite of one that he held at the beginning of this story, showing his belief changing and numbing as being a great man doesn't matter to him anymore. Doesn't mean shit if you're dead.
Yeah, he was King Rogant on his death, right? He was crowned king.
For a brief moment.
Yeah, but technically.
It's like that president that died 10 days in. Like, sure, he was president, but he didn't do anything.
Yeah. Best president there has been. Probably. Anyway, I don't know.
Zachary Taylor enjoyers disagree. Anyway.
I don't know what to think of.
You don't know who Zachary Taylor is. It's fine. Oh, yeah. Shivers? Sure.
Oh, I was trying to continue on.
No, yeah, good call.
Yeah.
We're a podcast about a book, not presidents.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't seem to be. He seems like he's leveling out quite a bit. He's not at the depth of the pit of despair that he was in recently. He's still low. He's still dark Shivers. He's still negative Shivers or whatever you want to call him.
Right.
But he seems to have accepted that, which I think is not like so far. I think when I called him out as being at rock bottom, that still feels like the lowest we've seen him so far.
Yeah, this isn't lower. It's just real. It's manifesting the change from an optimist to some degree, even though he claims otherwise. It's like a shift in terms of his worldview, I think, more heartily. More directly reflects reality in a way that, sure, is more real, but hope is good too. Shivers. You don't have to. He reflects a little bit further in a quote here that I really like. He says, "But a noble death, like Rudd Three Trees, one for himself, leading the charge, sword in fist, as the life left him. That was no better. Maybe men would sing a song about it badly when they were drunk. But for him who died, death was death, same for everyone. The great leveler, the hillman called it. Lords and beggars made equal."
I feel like that at its core is kind of the whole point of the back to the mud saying from the Northmen. Like, I feel like if we really pressed any of our Northmen characters, this is kind of what their views on death would be like. I feel like they've talked about maybe Three Trees.
But Shivers was a younger man.
Yeah.
He's more hopeful.
That's fair. I guess he's just come around to what they've all believed. Was it the Hillman that called him the Great Leveler? What did the Northmen call them?
So it's important to note that this isn't an exclusionary statement, but the Hillmen do call them the Great Leveler. It's not to say that like it's exclusively a Hillman thing.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought the Hillman had a different...
No, they say by the moon a lot, but that's different.
Yeah, they do say by the moon a lot. They were talking about the moon. But yeah, I guess I would have pointed to the Great Leveler as being like the Northman's word for, or name for death, as opposed to the...
We've said as much.
I mean, it can be both, but it just seems...
The Hillmen are Northmen, but...
Yeah, I guess it feels weird for Shivers to be making a distinction and pointing towards the Northmen for this instead of just his people.
The Hillmen. But yeah, I understand.
Sorry.
All good. Yeah, I get it. And I do think some of that is because, again, this book is intentionally written without requiring the context of what came before, but instead enhanced by it. And so as such, explaining that this is an adjacent thing is, I think, important. But like Logan treats the Great Leveler, unanimously as sort of the same idea. Like it's adopted. I think that this is maybe an imperfect moment as far as a description goes. But that's not the part of the phrase, the part of the statement that I fixate on, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
More the fact that like death is the same.
Yeah.
But it feels important to recognize the Great Leveler being brought up in the Great Leveler trilogy, as it's oft referred to.
Mm-hmm. And that's what this is referred to as. Like this is
the trilogy? Yes, this is the first book in the Great Leveler trilogy, as it's spoken. Yeah. Okay. Colloquially known as, but there's no official. It's the standalones, but it's the Great Leveler to most people, as you would search online. The Broken Binding even said the Great Leveler trilogy when they released the 3 books. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Unofficial, official title. Like being crowned king for a minute, but then dying.
He gave a speech as king.
Briefly. Yeah.
Or did
most of the speech?
No, somebody else did.
No, he was saying One Nation. He was giving all that.
It was him? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Of course, from there, we're back at Fontesarmo, looking at the destruction therein, as Shivers talks to a little boy about some boots. We get our first proper look at Volfjör and an update on the turning of the battle there as the forces have fled and ran a variety of different ways. There's a quote from Volfjör here as well that is, "I wish we'd wanted Austria, then the choice wouldn't have come up, but then I wish my wife hadn't fucked the baker while I was away in the Union on campaign 3 years ago. Wishing don't change a thing."
It's always about bakers, Crossland. Maybe Shank did start his bakery
3 years ago?
Yeah.
Fuck this guy's wife?
Yeah. Closed doors.
Atari was missing.
Yeah. Oh, man. This interaction and this quote and the greater context at large is, I think, a good microcosm of this weird, suddenly we're allies sort of situation that they found themselves in, with a lot of these like piecemeal armies that are sieging. Hey,
but they all ran away. I mean, like now it's just the 1,000 swords.
Yeah, that's true.
And like the 20 men that Volfjör has.
And the 1,000 swords aren't very well known for bold attacks.
Reputable effort. Yep. From there, we turn to Koska, sitting in a field chair, taking in the sights and swigs from his flask, his goat nearby, as Monza walks up and updates him on the fall in Talins, leaving only the 1,000 swords here to deal with today. And she explains that she was only spared from Morfyr's craft because of her glove, as she reflects.
Yeah, I mean, that goat is great. I love
just mowing down the grass,
the existence of the goat, and I love his commentary on it, kind of alluding to the hole that Monza left in Koska's life and how this goat is filling it.
Because goat,
Yeah, but this starts as a well-expected to be tense meeting, and it proves to be true at the beginning, but the tension loosens over time, and their friendship and relationship and whatever you want to call this is seems to be pretty easily rekindled in this moment.
Yeah. It definitely is. It's well captured. It's well front to back. It's a well orchestrated moment, as it feels very much like a father accepting a daughter back into open arms, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the tone
Exactly.
of this whole kind of section. Casca follows this up by talking about leaving, and Monza asks him to stay, and he replies, stay, and she says stay. And there's this sort of, they've always had this sort of like banter and riposte sort of nature to their language as they're kind of fencing as they talk through sentences, but with just using it as single words this time, as opposed to looking back to the old Fencing Master chapter and, seeing, not Fencing Master, but slightly before that in Viscerine, we saw those kind of like jousts as they would jab back and forth. This instead is just one word as this sort of catch-all. And very honestly, she just presses him to help her. Casca philosophizes about the many tasks that he's left unfinished and unworried about as a result, and kind of says that she should consider doing the same,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's great to see the philosophizing from Casca, but also, as you mentioned, the father-daughter sort of relationship really coming into full form. Like very slowly at first, but then just very suddenly, we're father-daughter again, and like this is how our relationship works. This is how we talk to each other. This is how we ask for things, and like we're in a rut again. We're in a pattern again.
Yeah. In a rut is so interesting as far as a phrase goes. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I meant it in like on track.
Yeah.
Not in the, like, stuck.
No, but a rut is also, like, I believe it's, like, dogs having sex is often referred to as a rut. Like, a rut is also, like, a sexual thing simultaneously. So,
yeah, like
sometimes...
Like deer.
Yeah.
Getting in the rut.
So,
yeah.
There's so many different uses for in a rut here, but also, like, coming together.
Yeah,
like,
wasn't thinking about deer sex,
no,
Crossland.
I know that you weren't suggesting like a sexual connotation, but I do see it as like a joining without it being like any of the sexual context, like we said, father-daughter. Like there's that tone here. Despite Casca's playful nature in his own perspective with Monza and referring to her one way or another, obviously that's more of his sort of like flirtatious brain just playing around with ideas, not really following through on anything, as mentioned previously. But Casca kind of interrupts that. Not that thought specifically, but the whole thought process that he's having here, and asks Monza if she knows why he's always loved her, even after she betrayed him. And she replies that she doesn't, and he says it's because she didn't really ever believe any of that cold rubbish. And this kind of reflects on all of the philosophy that we've spoken about, the fact that she kind of juggles between these different ideas, and all of it being nothing more than lies that she had to tell herself so that she could accomplish the task at hand. Not so much that it was any sort of solid base that she was operating from. These were all weapons to be wielded, not a base of operations or walls to fortify
tools.
her. Yeah.
But I mean, we've kind of clocked that from the beginning.
This is like, it rounds it. Yeah.
It does. And also, I don't know... The more I think about it, the more I don't know if that's really an invalid way to approach having like an arsenal of philosophers.
Philosophy would disagree with you, but absolutely, you are correct. Yeah. From like a personal moralistic standpoint, sure. But also, what do you really stand for then? But also, then what's the point of standing for anything? Which gets back to the whole, like, Shiver's whole argument. There's a great internal conversation here about, like, what's it mean? And Casca argues, they're just the lies that you tell yourself to get the job done. Yeah, I love this. I very much, I love this approach and this argument. It is, in my opinion, it is anti-philosophy. It's anti, navel gazing in a lot of ways. He's not saying that it's not important, but what he is saying is that, like, at a certain point, for certain people, all it is a tool to accomplish the end, right? And that's what she did. It was just the lies that she had to tell herself to get through the day to day. That's a good little thing.
Yeah, I'm not upset about it.
Yeah. Casca posits as a part of this, as he reflects, he says, when that scratch, that duel that we were mentioning earlier, that sort of verbal jousting as it appeared, don't be modest, you were ready to kill me. These are ruthless times we live in, and in ruthless times, mercy and cowardice are entire opposites. We all turn to shit when we die, Monza, but not all of us are shit while we're alive. Most of us, God knows I am, but you never were.
Aw.
It's a good little...
It's... This whole thing, subverting Benna's refrain, as we've come to learn it to be, is heartwarming and meaningful, and I feel like kind of breaks that Benna spell a little bit. Maybe it's just me, or the readers, or I don't know what it is, but this so closely being a parallel of Back to the Mud from the North feels great too. It's, I mean, kind of slightly different. Not really, though.
It's kind of a repudiation of that idea, right? Like,
is it?
I think, well, not Back to the Mud, but it's a repudiation of what Shivers is saying in the very beginning. Like, it doesn't matter how good of a person you are. So this is, again, in Uno reverse on the conversation that Shivers and Monza were having, on horseback early on in part 2 or part 3.
I don't know if it does. I don't know if it even does that, because he's saying that no matter what, we're all shit in the end. A lot of us are shit now. You're not shit now. That's a good thing, but you will be shit in the end. Like that, he's not emphasizing that part of it.
We all turn to shit when we die, Monza, but not all of us are shit while we're alive. So not all of us are shit while we're alive.
So
she's not shit while she's alive.
But the good people and the bad people are still shit in the end.
Yeah. Yes, but it's saying that like being good is worth something, right? And early on, she's saying
I guess
being good
it's just a matter of what you focus on. But he's not saying that.
What do you mean?
We're all shit in the end.
Read the quote. Read the quote.
We all turn to shit when we die, Monza. But not all of us are shit when we're alive.
Yep.
Most of us. God knows I am. But you never were.
Okay. So, I'm not arguing that going to the mud doesn't matter or isn't like the reality. Like everyone dies. And I think that's the base reality that I think you're also saying.
Yeah.
What he's saying is that some of us are shit while we're alive. And that like matters in a negative way. Like that's a bad thing. But we're still shit. We're all shit. But you were good. You'll still be shit. But you treated yourself as though you were a bad person.
Okay.
And that was why you were shit.
It's not.
You're
I guess
good and that's worth it.
My point is, I don't think this really does anything to reject Shivers' thoughts.
You don't think it rejects the idea that it doesn't matter if you're good?
Yeah.
That's basically what he's saying.
You still turn to shit in the end.
Death is the same for everyone, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be good. And like he is repudiating the idea of trying to be good.
He's
that
saying
Red Three Trees quote is not.
He's saying it's nice that she's good and she's not shit. But I all I'm saying is that there's no tie to the meaningfulness of being a good person when it comes to death.
Correct. Your value doesn't shift, but your value is important when you're alive. And that's, I think, the shift here, right? Is everything that this book has done so far has placed value on the inspiration that you leave behind when you're dead. This is saying that she was good while she's alive, or she's been alive, which is different, right? That's a separation. We can acknowledge that, right? So, like, we both agree that this isn't saying that it's important to be good when you die. You're shit either way. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
It didn't matter how you were in life. Because you're going to be shit anyway.
We're all shit when we die.
Yeah.
But like, that doesn't mean we agree there. Okay. that's the core. That's our core premise. So working from the other premises that have been established over the course of the story.
I think it's just about focus. I think it's just about what you're focusing on, because I think that he's saying almost exactly the same thing that Shivers is, but Shivers is focusing on the negative. Like, it doesn't matter what you are, good or bad, because you're all going to be shit. And Casca takes it as takes it for granted. Like, yeah, we're all going to be shit, but despite that, you were good.
Yeah. Right, which is important, I think.
I don't think he says anything about the importance of it. And I don't think it changes any of the differences between like what they're saying. Their philosophy is the same. It's just a matter of their focus in the moment.
But why would you highlight it if it's not important? That like it's a relevant thing. That like you did good while you were alive.
Because it feels good? Because it makes her feel good?
Okay.
I don't understand how what point you're trying to make.
I'm trying to argue that Casca is arguing that she was a good person and that that's important above and beyond, right? Above and beyond death. It isn't.
I don't think he's tying it to death at all.
It isn't retained in this quote, but there is immediately a lot more context as you read the rest of the scene, right? So right before this, he says, I pretended to care for men, but in truth, I don't give a damn whether they live or die. You always did care, but you pretend not to give a damn. I never saw you waste one man's life, and yet they like me better. Ha! There's justice. You always did the right thing by me, Monza. Even when you betrayed me, it was better than I deserved. I've never forgotten that in time of Miras after the siege, when you wouldn't let the slavers have those children. Everyone wanted to take the money, but I did. Faithful did, even Benna. Especially Benna, but not you. Don't be modest, you could have killed me. This whole quote that we're talking about right now. Monza, not all of us are, but not all of us are shit while we're alive. Most of us are. God knows I am, but you never were. Mm-hmm. And then, will you help me? Of course I'll help you. Never slightest question. I believe that that's a repute, like that idea is that like she's worth more because she was better.
No, she's still going to be shit. Like, that's the whole point. That's the whole thing that Shivers is focusing on too. Is that it doesn't matter if you're good or bad in life. You're going back to the mud. And he's saying,
arguing whether or not
he's saying that here too. We're all shit in the end. But as a gleam of light, you weren't shit in life as well.
Yeah, I'm arguing that gleam of light doesn't really
mean
important.
anything after the afterlife.
Yeah,
and he's not.
But that's why why he agrees to help her is because she is the light, right? Like that's the context here.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's fair, but I don't think it. I think both of their philosophies can live. Like there's no contradiction between Casca's quote here and Shivers's philosophy that he outlines.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything that contradicts.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. What I'm going to say, though, is that Casca's makes the space for something else to exist. Shivers is not. Shivers is like dead and defined. Does that make sense? Casca has a leniency. Shivers has absolutism.
We're all shit in the end is not absolutist?
What he's giving in context is that he's willing to help her because she's a better person, despite it all, right?
Yeah.
That's what we just said.
I mean, yeah, but
am I crazy?
I feel like we're blowing past each other and trying to.
I'm arguing with most. I agree with like almost all of your point. I guess the part that I physically disagree on is like this is not portrayed as the same thing. This is portrayed as something that is different and distinct from the way that Shivers thinks about it, but only in the fact that he's giving Monza a degree of separation, right? So, using the two examples, Shivers talks about Rudd Three Trees. He talks about one for himself being the charge, sword in hand when he death, but he's talking about the nobility in death, right? Like dying nobly. That's not living nobly, right? As he's reflecting on that. Casca is reflecting on living a noble life and doing the right thing while you're alive. Both of them are placing value judgments on that mattering when they're dead, but that doesn't mean that doesn't place some value while they're alive on the actions that they're doing, right? Like, yes, both philosophies at their core are admitting that in the end, when you're dead, it doesn't matter. You're dead, whatever. Like, you barely leave more than a stain. But while you're alive, I'm going to support the right thing. And that's that differentiating point that I'm trying to hit on. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Does that make more sense? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I can see where you're coming from. I still think they can. I still don't think they entirely contradict each other, but I can see where you're coming from.
again, I'm not saying that they contradict each other. I'm saying that they... I did say they're a counterpoint earlier. You're 100% correct.
Yeah, you called it a repudiation.
Well, in my mind, what
times.
I was calling a repudiation, you're right. In my mind, the repudiation that I was referencing is the conversation that Shivers and Monza have back in Sapani and Viscerine on the horses. I forget where exactly that happens, but it's sort of this, it's a reversal, right? And it's Monza being on the other side, realizing that there's good in life. They're still talking about death back then. I reread the first 2 parts in preparation for this because there's so much reflection on the end and the beginning. But the end all be all here is that these work together, but one acknowledges the life lived and one is just talking about the remnant that you leave after death. Is that? Yeah. Is it a fair?
I think that's fair.
Ground?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I agree. I want to make it clear that there is a separation here, and I think it's one worth remarking upon because it is the whole reason that Casca does what he does.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
Do you think so?
Yes, I think so.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes, I'm sure.
If you could see my face right now, listeners, you would know that it's sketchy.
Well, they can hear you echoing as you talk into a beer can.
No, they can't. They probably could.
I can.
Yeah. Which means they can. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Core point being, I love this chapter in particular. I think it does a great job highlighting a lot of the core themes and kind of interrogating them. We also have like our full, I think, almost Uno reverse from a philosophical standpoint as the characters entered the story. From Shivers and Monza, like they basically traded places in some ways. She's gained hope, he's lost it.
Yeah. We've been talking for a while, for a few weeks now, about the sort of flip in position that Monza and Shivers find themselves in, and I think this continues that very clearly.
Yeah. To close that all off, he agrees that, of course, the Thousand Swords is going to help her. And he also says that Orso can be hers, as he's yesterday's news or what have you.
Hell yeah, man.
Yesterday's man. Yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Casca's in. And in a way that is genuine versus a way that, we've seen these confrontations that have happened with the other captains that have this sort of wishy-washy nature to them. And I think it's also important that we're in his perspective for this conversation because it shows that honesty.
Yeah. Changed man.
Maybe not changed. I actually don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know that he changed so much as it's still like love and acknowledging it, like, I don't know if this is a change so much as it's him repudiating revenge, maybe, for love, but
still seeking revenge elsewhere.
Yeah. He's got 3 little guys to take care of, and he's got 2 guys dead and 1 guy left.
3 little guys.
10 revenge deaths, at least in the story. 11, 12. If you count all Morviers, there's a lot there. There's a lot.
Couple few dozen.
There's at least 30. So, with that, we move into our final chapter of the week. One might call it Inevitable. The Inevitable. And we start this chapter with the dice. And the dice say 2 and 1 as we jump to Friendly again. We get a reflection on his journey in some ways as he thinks about the order of things and how much he really likes it in the Thousand Swords with the rules for every individual thing. 3 lashings for punishment for some crime, 2 meatballs and extra soup for those that are going up on the ladders first, and all of these different reflections on the order that sorts out the chaos of all of these people. As such, though, Casca asks Friendly to protect Monza with Shivers as they enter the lair of Orso, and also calls him a dear friend, like pulls him in close and is like, "You're my guy, dude." Like he's excited to be friends with Friendly. It seems like there's a genuine connection there.
I have to say, I've mentioned it before, but there is just something so satisfying with building the framework of these scenes around the dice rolls.
Yeah,
and
it's so cool.
It's so cool, and 2-in-1, you can make 2-in-1 come up wherever. And Friendly does a great job of finding it all over the place.
Everywhere. Mm-hmm.
I think, by the way, since we're talking about Friendly, I think I used the wrong... I think I called him Sergeant in Arms last week.
Maybe?
I'm pretty sure
Sergeant?
I did. Instead of First Sergeant or whatever. What's his actual title?
Sure.
First Sergeant.
Sounds right. I know he was Sergeant Friendly, but...
I think I called him Sergeant in Arms, and I think it's actually like First Sergeant or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. But just want to...
All I know is that he's Sergeant. It's not... Titles are one of... Especially military titles, for some reason, like, are one of those things that, like, have never glued in my mind. I think in part, especially when you read, like, military fiction, it's because they change so frequently. It's the, you know, in an obtuse way, it's the level up of that fiction a lot of the time. And so it's like... Was he is it Marshall West that we're talking about right now? Or is it, you know, I don't know, Colonel,
right,
etc. So,
yeah, I'm with you there. It has never been a strong point for me.
I had the hardest time not calling him Marshall West the whole time that we were reading that book. My brain was like, Colonel. I think
you
Captain
fucked up a couple times.
I definitely did, because my brain is like Marshall West. It's Marshall West. It's Marshall West. Anyway, so to that point, Sergeant sounds good. Sergeant in Arms. There are important distinctions between those titles, but I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I don't know. But shortening to Sergeant covers both of them, so we can go with that one.
He's Sergeant Friendly. Sergeant Friendly, sir. No, what's your name? Friendly. I get that. You are very clearly... No, it's Friendly.
Don't
on first,
but Costello this,
yeah. Yeah. So we God, I feel like you just like spooned my heart out right there. Like you just a rusty spoon and just went in and were like, Crossland, stop making that bad joke.
Stop it.
So we then turn to Shivers and Monza asking why he's smiling, and with his reply that he's made peace with himself, he's stopped fighting who he is. Now, despite all of the other things that have happened, he's just acknowledging this. He also reflects that his life has always been just about the next thing, the next place, the next thing over the horizon, the next country, rather than just being who he is. What do you think about this kind of internal reflection?
I think that even with the hindsight of what happens later on at the end of the chapter, this reads perfectly sincere and perfectly truthful to me. Like I think he genuinely is smiling because he genuinely feels this way. It's a sinister backdrop of like what that implies, but I think he is being very, very genuine in this moment.
Yeah, I don't disagree. There is an honesty that and him being genuine, but also like he quit trying. You know what I mean? Like there's something, he quit trying to change, which is also a thing. Like if you know that you need to change and you quit, like that's a problem. And so he's no longer fighting it, and that is sincere that he's accepting who he is. For sure. But is that a good thing?
No, of course not.
Yeah, right. That's like the argument here. Like, I can accept that I'm a lazy sack of shit. Doesn't mean I shouldn't try to be better, or that I shouldn't like do other things, and like being sincere with that fact versus trying to better myself against what standard, you might ask. But you know, there's so many standards to measure. But yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting one because I do agree with you that it's genuine and sincere, and in some ways it's Shivers' truth, but simultaneously, is it a good truth? It's not.
No.
And a lot of people, I think, can get sucked into that and just like absolve themselves of whatever they do by saying, you know, this is the way I want to live, or this is how I am.
Yeah, this is the leveled up version of, oh, what's that stupid fucking quote? If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Like this
is a leveled up version of that. It is different, but I do in my opinion, it's different, but I do see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Because that puts you on a spectrum, right? This is saying that, like, I don't want to change. I shouldn't have to change, which is, I think, a little bit. It's similar.
No, it's the same.
It's not. I don't think it's the same. Not deserving me at my best says that I can be that good, you know? But, like, Shivers is being like, my good limit is precisely here.
Yeah.
Versus, I know you don't want to have this conversation because we just talked about semantics for a solid 20 minutes, but I do think that there's an important distinction between the pair.
Fair.
But I do understand your premise.
Yeah, there's some wiggle room between those analogies, but
yeah, it is very adjacent to. I mean, and I think it's almost emphasized in his little quote here. He says, "Can't I be an optimistic killer?" to kind of Monza's retort about him being a killer. And he fires back at Logan Nine Fingers quote, "A man once told me, the man who killed my brother, as it goes, that good and evil are a matter of where you stand." And Monza has an adverse reaction to this, thinking maybe those are just the lies we tell ourselves, which is quoting Koska from earlier in the last chapter, right? Kind of back at him.
Which is funny because like, this is almost exactly her quote from last week. Or from the, not last week. Yeah, it is. From the flashback.
Yeah.
So she has technically gone through a lot of.
Is that this one?
Yeah, it was.
The river? Yeah. The butchering of Capriel. Yep. I was like, is it Puranti or is it this? Because they happen so quickly. But yeah. And it is this week.
I guess maybe it makes sense. Like she and Shivers have been on this inverse path from each other, and that was from before she met Shivers. So yeah, for her to have grown from that perspective, which I don't know if that is necessarily a pessimistic perspective or I don't know if this quote from Koska applies here. Because that, like, this is a perspective sort of stance at morality. Like I don't know if it really applies in the same way as how she's trying to apply it. Like, how are these the lies we tell ourselves?
Know. I think that what she's firing back is the good and evil are a matter of where you stand, and she says, you know, thinking maybe those are just the lie we tell ourselves. I think that that's real. Like, I think that this settles into like Shank's thing from a couple of weeks ago, but like being a quiet baker would be much better than being a murderer. Like, being a murderer is objectively bad. That's not to conflict against him being an optimistic killer, which I think is true. I think he is an optimist still, despite being a killer. I think there's a lot of brightness to Shivers, despite being a negative, kind of evil dude, kind of, you know, spiteful dude, to say the least. Maybe not evil. But I think that Monza kind of putting a final morality twist here, to me, makes some sense. Like, that there is a line of judgment and that we should level with it, which is what attracted her to him in the first place, is he drew a line.
And there are inherently good and evil people.
Inherently good and evil actions that then therein shape inherently good and evil people. Yeah. Okay. I think that's what she's arguing.
Yeah.
Or like trying to push back against, which she was on the other side of at the beginning of the story. And he also, I think, is on the line. I don't think that he's over one way or the other on his own opinion of this particular part of the problem. He's just saying, isn't it a matter of where you stand? To which she's saying, it does matter where you stand, basically.
Okay.
It's not perfect, but that's the way that feels to me as a read.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
he kind of shrugs it off.
Probably the best read of it right now that I can think of.
Yeah, it's not clean, but I think that it is, to me at the very least, it reads as the way that goes. But Monza pushing back against that, kind of shining that light through on there are good people and there are bad people. But there is also the reality of, like, history's written by the winners. Like, optimism and realism are not enemies, which is often how they're portrayed, but they do often conflict.
Yeah, and depending on the motives and depending on the origin, there are people who will be heroes to one side and villains to the other.
Right.
And I don't think that necessarily changes changes the morality of their actions.
Right. Yeah, this is interesting. This is almost... D&D doesn't do a good job of doing this, but this is almost like the alignment discussion at like the highest level, if that makes sense. Like, this is why alignment is kind of bullshit, is because like there are reasons that you would make a good decision, and there are perspectives in which good is bad, even though it's objectively considered good on the alignment scale. Like, that's where you get in arguments with people on alignment generally. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I like this from that perspective. Hard to ratify what the truth is, which is Shiver's argument.
Yeah.
So, after reflecting on the inevitable, the siege begins in earnest as men charge across the gardens up to raise ladders on the walls. As rocks fall down on the crowd of men below, even small flaming pots of oil spilled on the men as they took to the ladders. Shortly after that settles, Monza, Friendly, and Shivers jog in and take to the ladders themselves. Shivers locks in a very interesting way. I don't know how he felt about this, but he looks just straight forward as he's climbing up, feeling the wood between his hands and his feet as he shuffles up the ladder, being there is little that he can do to anything that's being pointed down at him, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he can't control what's happening above.
Feels reminiscent of something. And I am struggling to grasp what it feels reminiscent of. But
in like something that we've read, or
no,
okay.
Something philosophical.
Oh, look down. I'm just kidding.
I don't know if it was something stoic or like a modern sort of twist on stoicism.
Sure,
like it might be some sort of Ryan Holidayism or something that I'm thinking.
Yeah, it
of.
feels like a focus on what's in front of you. You know, like a amor fati, own your fate kind of a thing. It does feel adjacent to that. I definitely understand. To me, PJ, the thing that I think of in this moment is Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, PS2 video game or GameCube game, when you're climbing up the ladders and you can't do anything about the fucking guys that are on the top of the ladders. You just should have picked a better ladder. And you take the image and then you got to get down, get on a different ladder.
God, I fucking love that game. We've talked every time it comes up, we talk about it.
Yeah. Return of the King. Yeah.
Or just played it on Xbox at my friend Reed's house.
I did it on PS2 and GameCube at different points because, yeah, we needed more controllers so more people could play because we didn't want to get a second PlayStation. We wanted all 4 people to be able to play. So we put it on the GameCube. But what a sick ass game. Anyway, yeah, that's what I thought of in this moment. Immediately, I was like, Lord of the Rings. Got it. Okay, cool. You went on the philosophical tangent this time.
What can I say?
But yeah, what a terrible time. It's also interesting because burning oil often there aren't that many accounts of burning oil ever being used in Europe or otherwise in the context in which it's often depicted in fiction. So I've listened to and read a couple of...
the logistics of it are...
It's impractical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. Tar a couple of times. So like burning tar was much more common than burning oil, but often it would just be kitchen pots of oil. It would be hot oil. They wouldn't even necessarily be like lighting it on fire. They would be just throwing kitchen oil basically down at people.
Fuck, man. I've spilled
which is awful.
I caught a bunch of halibut this summer and I've been like frying it every once in a while. That shit splatters once in a while and hits me in the arm. It's just a tiny little drop of oil and that shit sucks. Like, imagine a whole pot of it. I don't want to do that.
Right. It would be awful. Which is kind of why I like this depiction. I think it kind of blends between the two, if that makes sense. Like, often, again, like the big oil pot of siege that's on fire, blah, 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 over depicted. This is like, it's kitchen oil or like a couple of small pots. It's nothing super serious. They used to light it on fire. But
it's mentioned as burning, but like you can hit it with a flaming arrow or something right before it goes over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's realistic enough. It's better than other depictions that I've read or seen. So.
Still fucking horrifying.
Right. Yeah. And just because it's not true in medieval life doesn't mean it couldn't be true in fantasy for some reason as well. Another thing that's important to remark upon. There's no seeking of earnestness in historical representation in Joe Abercrombie's work. So
there are zombies in this movie, or in this book. Not this book.
Yeah.
In this series.
Yeah. Right. Yes, exactly. So from the siege and climbing up the ladders, we then turn to Shanked. He finds a guard lazily watching the door, and he basically lets him through after he lets him know that he's there to kill Mercado for Orso, which is such a funny moment. But then, in addition, he runs into a balding man of whom is kind of scurrying out of the palace, and he and Morveer have such a great interaction that is so well depicted by Stephen Pacey. As we switch perspectives between the two, one running out, one running in. Any thoughts on Shanked and Morveer's interaction, or Shanked in general, as he kind of walks through the scene?
Okay, so Shanked is either extremely perceptive, which wouldn't be surprising to me, or Morveer is super unsubtle when reaching in for like a secret compartment, which I also don't think would be very surprising. Either way, this is a super fun interaction. The transition happening because Morveer forgets the voice that he had put on, and then that transition is the correcting of the voice is great.
It's so good.
Oh God. In the voice delivery of this scene, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun for these two characters to brush up against each other without really meeting. Because technically Morveer is on Shank's list. Like, Shanked is only really focused on Monza, but he did agree, like, he is being paid to kill everyone involved in the plots, including
Vitari,
Morveer. And Vitari. That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great point. And yeah, it's just such a good kind of handoff. I do appreciate that. I do also, which way do you think it is? Do you think that it is just Shanked being extra? What's your headcanon? Is it Shank's perception, or is it Morveer's bumbling idiocy?
I think it's a little of both.
Sure.
I think most people wouldn't have caught on to what Morveer was doing, but I don't think nobody would have. Like, I don't think it has to be a supernatural sense in order to catch him.
Right. There's something preternatural about Shank's movements, but simultaneously,
like, I think he can just have normal vision and still probably clock him.
Morveer is not doing that well of a distraction. Versus, like, we were talking highly about Morveer's skills when he placed the pipe in the dude's hand, quickly stabbed him, walked him down the street, right? Like, that was an expert movement as far as we evaluated it. So I give it to you. I agree. I think that it is somewhere in between, but I do prefer to imagine him as a little bit bumbling.
Yeah.
Especially thrown off because of Shank's honesty, I guess, as he approaches the whole thing. And that confuddling him, which is a nice gesture of being caught off guard from last week, you know? Like, it's a nice little counterpoint.
And Shank just assumes this is a deserter.
Yeah. Just another weirdo.
Yep.
Speaking of Morveer, we move with him into the camp of the Thousand Swords as he prepares to poison Casca by poisoning a full collection of wine and spirits where he has undoubtedly made his residence. He freezes and hides as we hear the footsteps approach as he stumbles his way backwards into the latrine, I think.
He does. Yeah.
Latrine, right?
Steps into his
closet, he thinks at first. And then
he thinks it's a closet, and he just steps right into shit. This scene does a very good job of making sure that we know that Morveer is absolutely certain that this is Casca's room. So much so that I was actually surprised to learn that it actually was Casca's room. Like, it was laid on so
you
thick
thought that,
I expected it to be like a very obvious, oh no, this isn't Casca's room. and like the thickness was laid on so much that it was surprising that it was true. So
fair enough.
Yeah. I was very much expecting a different outcome there.
That's fair. That it could have been, just Victus and maybe a secondary guard.
Yeah.
That were like,
it could still technically be Victus's room, I guess. No, I think Casca might make some commentary about like the bottles or something.
Having a drink, the bottles, that are here.
Maybe he doesn't mention them as his. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think he does outright, but they're the bottles, right? And they're in his room, one might assume. So, Also, there are some internal notes as he's reflecting on his greatness in the moment of being able to poison all these bottles, uncork, recork, uncork, recork, and this monotonous work as he moves through them. He reflects on all those in his past who he wish could have seen him, his wife, his mom, and he ends up on a creepy note with Day in his mind. As he's like, if only she would have touched, and it just cuts.
That was something. That was something.
Yeah. Does not do any good for the more Veer incel vibe. No.
It directly feeds more into it.
Yeah. Wait. More Veer's an incel?
This is the first time. Worse.
Yeah. All right. So from there, we get a quick flip, and I mean like 2-paragraph flip to Casca, where he and Victus settle into the room for a drink and cards during and in the midst of the battle here. Anything you took away immediately?
Victus, I would assume, would be pretty wary of what happened to the other captains. We already know that he was like sizing up the scabbard that was empty, and he's like, oh, he's dead, huh? Okay. Just didn't seem convinced at all, but nevertheless, he feels comfortable to be alone in the room with the man that he suspects killed his friends, and is correct in that suspicion. The only other thing about the scene that I wanted to point out was that Casca does only grab one glass
because he has his flask. So, yeah, fair point. We then, from there, flip to Monza, witnessing the cruelty of the 1,000 swords on the servants as they pass the fighting for the most part, as the pillaging continues. She returns at last to the grand dining room, where she gets a flash from her past, eating with the other officers under Orso, all these different people that she's killed over the course of the story, and many more, and notes that it's all empty, as the pillaging has continued and emptied the room out. There's this wonderful note that I just, for whatever reason, I was reading, and I've been doing a lot of writing and rewriting lately of a novella that I've written, and it just hit me. But as the pillaging continues, they find a music room, and they were battering a demented symphony from the instruments as they broke apart. And that is just such a good fucking detail. I mean, like,
that's horrifying.
Joe. Like, yeah.
That's great. She, as you mentioned, kind of remarks that everyone from that dinner is now dead, almost. And it seems like she's on track to make that guest list a little bit more complete one way or another. Like, it's going to be either her or Orso, presumably. But all of that pillaging was awesome. There was a spoons guy that, like, he's like, I got some
the spoons guy is very good.
Throws the spoons everywhere, and everybody else like dives for him, and like they're tearing into the cushions, like as if that's where Orso kept his gold. But yeah, the pinnacle of it is that demented symphony note with the instruments. Yeah,
to me, there's some like resonance that's happened in my life where I've been playing Elden Ring because I have free time during the days after I spend a lot of time applying for jobs and writing one way or another and working on our shows and stuff like that. I was playing Elden Ring, and this scene came on with the spoons thing, and it was very close to a voice that a character in the game had pulled, and there was like this mirror moment of like weird little embarrassing guy does embarrassing thing that everyone takes advantage of, and I had a full like, how did this happen at the same time moment.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was fun. But yeah, what a number of good details that happen throughout the scene. The spoons guy is great. The battery instruments and that discordant symphony is wonderful, and like just the general vibe of running amok. This is not a soldiery. This is not like people battering down the doors properly. This is a full.
They're just looting,
seizing. Yeah, just looting. Yeah, killing some people here and there, but other than that, like
they're getting
no
theirs.
longer an army. Yeah, right. So then the dreaded inevitable rears its ugly head. Shivers practically catches Monza off guard, saying time to get this over with, and swings for her, despite kind of a conversation that goes back and forth for a half second. She dodges and hurls back an insult, calling him a one-eyed cocksucker, and he explains the hard why as to his actions here to her, including Ida paying her and her messy ways of handling everything as she reflects internally on her own failings as well.
I feel like it was a mistake to bring up Ida at this point. Like, I
Really?
get that it's a relevant bit of information, but he's got so much in the way of reasoning without that. And Monza, in my estimation, does a better job of laying all that out to herself than Shivers does to her.
Okay. I don't disagree with you fully. I think that Monza does make a better case than Shivers does. However, the case that Shivers makes is the case that Monza had been repeatedly made over and over and over again in the book, which is that he's bought and paid for. So, of course, the thing that he spits back first is that he's been bought by someone else, to me, at the very least.
That's
so I
fair.
think that's why Ida comes up so early in his arguments.
Okay.
Like, someone else paid me more, and all you fucking cared about, girl, was who paid for what.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah, you swayed me on that. Good point.
Yeah. It's a weird one, but I agree with you otherwise. It does almost, the text doesn't portray it that well, if that makes sense. Like that should have been, it probably should have been like an internalized piece of monologue that Monza realizes to like give that context in a similar way. But that also could be too telly.
Yeah.
Maybe. So, I don't know.
Or maybe without mentioning Ida's name specifically, just say he got a better offer.
Could have worked. That would have. I think that maybe might have done it better, and then could have led to like a better core confrontation. Yeah. Fair enough. But otherwise, I agree with you on the rest. Like her internal rationalization is obviously much better, which is interesting because again, there's a lot of inversion that we've talked about over the course of this section, I would say, this whole part. And this is another one wherein he is fighting just for the coin now, wherein she is making the emotional argument. Although, again, she doesn't disagree with the stance that he's taken. She just like understands a more emotional. She's like come to terms with a more emotional argument. So to round this out, we've got the final little line here for the chapters. It had been coming a long time since she fucked Rogant, since she turned her back on Shivers, since he lost his eye in the cells under Salier's palace. Maybe it's been coming from the first moment they met. Before even. Always.
Always. God, that's a good quote.
It's a good one.
That's a good one. It's a good one to end on.
It's a good one to end on. Yeah. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to break this up, in case you couldn't tell. Yeah. Specifically, even into the holiday break versus how we would normally do it. So, or how I would normally do it. But
well, you done good.
Why, thank you. It's a good quote to round it out on. So next week is our final little bit. Of course, we're just going to be reading the end through the end. Thus the Whirligig, I think through, was it Happy Days or something like that? Something akin to that. But PJ, before we... Happy Endings is the name of the final chapter. So thus the Whirligig through Happy Endings. PJ, do you have any final bets that you want to levy one way or another? Are there any that are coming to mind that you see paying off?
Man, just because of the way that they've gone separate directions, and that that conversation. I don't know what mechanism would exist for this to happen, but Shivers has relayed the story of him letting Logan go and having a couple opportunities to take his revenge and letting it go. And I'm curious if Monza, I'm going to bet that Monza reflects that as well with Orso and lets Orso go.
Okay.
I think that's all I've got right now, though.
That's it. That's all you have? Nothing on Friendly, Shivers, Casca?
Ah, fuck.
Morveer? Shanked?
Morveer is
You don't have to
gone.
make bets, but even like just positions where you think they're going to go.
Morveer's gone.
Morveer's dead.
Not dead, gone.
Gone. Okay. He runs away.
Yeah.
Flees. Okay.
The crown thing didn't work for Monza, and things are getting too hot. Shanked. We learned what Shank's revenge was. And I think Monza's actions will sway what he... Like, I don't think he's actually going to end up killing her because of something that she does. And maybe that's killing Orso. Going back on my bet. I'm keeping that bet, but I'm just kind of playing through my thought process here. Like, if she kills Orso, then Shanked doesn't have anybody to pay him.
Gives him an out?
Yeah. Friendly.
Shivers, Friendly, and Casca would be the remaining. Yeah.
Shivers loses this fight. I think if Shivers doesn't kill Monza with the first swing, which he didn't, I don't think he wins a duel against her, even with the crippled hand.
And the heavier weapon that she can't parry. But, yeah.
Yeah.
That was another note that comes up, kind of in that duel, where it's like, she can't even try to use her Calvas.
Right. That's a good point. But still, I think she's the better swordsman.
Yep.
She recognizes that and will work around it.
Yep. She already was.
Right. Casca, I think, and Friendly. I think Casca and Friendly are a unit from here on out, as they kind of have been for a while. They're not here with her, right?
Friendly was following Monza and Shivers.
Friendly was.
As a protector. Yeah. Casca is he's back in the camp tent.
Okay.
Next to the latrine where Morveer is.
So Friendly, he's a protector of Monza or a protector of Monza and Shivers?
Specifically Monza, but the implication was that Shivers should be good.
I'm not looking for implications. I'm looking for letter of the law. So I think Shivers
remarks the two of us should be able to cover her. Friendly remarks that the two of them should be good to cover her. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think as Shivers starts attacking Monza, that means he's got to protect Monza. So I think he involves himself in the duel on Monza's side. Maybe he dies to Shivers, and that opens up Shivers to get taken down by Monza. That's what I'm going with. And then Casca is just drinking water out of his flask, and Victus drinks the poisoned liquor, and he was going to kill him anyway, so he just kind of follows through with whatever theatrics he was going to do.
You already have made a bet on Casca drinking water out of his flask.
Right.
So, yeah.
I know that's...
Yep. Right.
I'm just pointing it out. I still think he's sober.
I understand. Yeah.
And then I think he, from there, goes and finds Monza and Orso. And they have a final 3 confrontation, however it ends. But he joins Monza in that.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Well, PJ, there's only 2 hours left in the audiobook. It's all... That's it. That's all.
It's fast.
Thus the Whirligig is an hour and 6 minutes, and the other 3 chapters culminate the rest. So,
all right. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I am very excited, of course, to end Best Served Cold, which we will do next week, closing out part Talins, closing out Best Served Cold, closing out my favorite novel that I've read in my adult life. And I am genuinely so pumped to be able to talk about this whole thing in context and get to break it down. I'm super excited for our wrap-up episode as that approaches as well, and to kind of get to talk through so many great themes and otherwise, and kind of the Joe's storytelling ability on a standalone level, which is a thing that we haven't been able to talk about, you know? Like, we kind of judge the trilogy as a trilogy. We also judge the books as books, but like, this is just one story.
Right.
Yeah.
One whole story in one single book.
I'm very excited to talk about all those things. But with that, we'll see you next week. We're gonna do some things. Super excited. This is our New Year's-ish episode. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. 2025. Quarter of a century in some ways. You know?
A quarter of a century from
the 2000s.
The 2000s.
From 2000. Yeah. Right. We're older than a quarter of a century was kind of my thought there. But yes, it has been 25 years since the turn of the century.
Which has nothing to do with our show.
It has nothing to do with anything, but it is interesting,
or us.
I guess. Welcome to 2025, I guess. Yep. We're millennials.
Okay.
Cool.
I guess that's my cue to transition into talking about social media. As a millennial, I am fluent in the social medias.
Oh my God.
All of which are graced by Crossland's presence at Words Whiskey Pod. It's Crossland. It's not me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
check us
know
out
where
on
to start.
Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads sometimes. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. You can call or text me, not faxing. You can collect call. We'll accept the charges if you call us from prison at 910-408-2534.
Oh God. Okay. PJ coming up with new ways to turn the phone over.
Right?
Of course. And I hope people are able to both read and listen to our show.
Well, yeah, reading. I didn't know if they got
sidebar, you didn't know this. On our behalf, from my own money, I donated this year to a fund that provided 30 copies of Red Rising to prison inmates, the trilogy. So
That's
we
awesome.
bought 30 copies for people of whom were incarcerated in California and otherwise to go through like a little learning reading program. So did that this last year.
That's really cool.
In 2024. Yeah. Through Jinx, also known as the Creative Violet or something like that. I'll for sure put it in the links, but he ran a program within inmates over this last year, and so committed to a number of copies and donated money there. So
super cool.
Yeah, thought it was a great idea and loved it and wanted to support that. So I did. With that in mind, I would love if you would leave a review of our podcast one way or another. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment if you're a fan on Spotify, episode to episode. Those things are great. We love to be interrogated so long as you don't care about our pronunciation of things or like random weird facts that don't matter, like heights or weights, because does not really matter. I mean, PJ, if I called you 5'7", is that important?
I'm not fucking 5'7".
I'm so mad about it.
I'm so mad. I'm going to call you and yell at you about it at 910-408-2534.
Okay, regardless, leave us a review or a comment wherever you can, whatever your preferred platform is. And with that, we'll see you next week for the end of Best Served Cold.
I'm so excited. See you then.
I'm so excited.